Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Leung. In this video, we are going to do a question about the ecosystem. Before we do the question, can you recall the following two basic concepts for me? Firstly, tell me the three basic features of the ecosystem. Secondly, tell me the difference between the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. Both of these are the very fundamental concepts to study the ecosystem. Ready? Let's go! I hope you can recall the concept easily. The whole chapter, ecology, is the study of the relationship between organisms and the environment. For example, lions predate rabbits. Lion ejects, then the organic waste will be decomposed by the bacteria and go back to the nature. Meanwhile, the higher the light intensity, the higher the temperature is. So you can see the relationship among the organisms, between one organism and another organism, and among various environmental factors. So what are the three elementary features of the ecosystem? Firstly, the ecosystem is self-sufficient or self-supporting. It means that the ecosystem contains all the resources needed to support its organisms at all the time. Secondly, the ecosystem is self-perpetuating or self-sustaining. It means that the ecosystem is able to get rid of the dead bodies and waste of the organism. Lastly, the ecosystem attains equilibrium but is dynamic, so the system is relatively constant. The following three pictures summarize the features of the ecosystem. In order to achieve the above processes, there must be a constant cycling of material inside the ecosystem. For example, oxygen and carbon dioxide gases exist in the atmosphere. Surely, organisms will breathe in oxygen for respiration and breathe out carbon dioxide. However, the plants will uptake carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and release oxygen to the atmosphere with the input of the solar energy. Therefore, the level of oxygen and carbon dioxide keeps changing but relatively constant. Then, the biotic factors are the living component, but the abiotic factors are the non-living component in the ecosystem. Let's take the temperate grassland as the example. We use the rainfall, humidity, temperature, and light intensity as the environmental factors to describe the particular habitat. The rainfall of the temperate grassland is heavier than that in the desert, but not as much as that in the woodland. The temperature in the temperate grassland varies a lot. A friendly reminder for you, if you have basic knowledge of geography, you can study this chapter a bit better. After the brief revision, let's take a look at the questions about the changes in number of phytoplankton in a pond over a year. The graph also shows that the changes in nitrate level, light intensity, and temperature. By reading the graph, I want you to draw a line at each peak, so prepare a ruler with you. And the phytoplankton is a type of algae, so they can carry out photosynthesis in the water. In part A, we need to state and explain three abiotic factors that cause the blooming of the phytoplankton in spring and autumn. 6 marks for 3 abiotic factors. That means 2 marks for 1 abiotic factor, 1 mark for identifying the particular abiotic factor, and 1 mark for talking how the particular abiotic factor leads to the blooming of the phytoplankton. According to the graph, it shows that the light intensity is relatively higher in spring and autumn. Then we have to think about how the high light intensity helps in blooming of the phytoplankton. Of course, we can relate the light to the photosynthesis. So the greater light energy input, the higher the photosynthetic rate is. So the phytoplankton can produce more food and rapid growth and reproduction. So make sure that when you talk about particular factor, it can lead to a certain phenomenon. So remember those words: higher, more, rapid, faster, something like this. Secondly, the temperature in spring and autumn are favorable for the enzyme to work. The ants are involved in the photosynthesis and biosynthesis to produce more food, protein synthesis, and DNA replication. So that's why the phytoplankton, they will have a rapid growth and reproduction. Thirdly, I would like to introduce a very important concept when studying ecosystem. It is the concept of time lagging. Predation, killing, or feeding are surely a relatively faster process. The lion bites the rabbit and then it kills already. However, growth takes time. Accumulation of pollutants takes time. And the climate change takes time. When studying the booming of phytoplankton, we have to consider the timing. In spring and autumn, we can see that the concentration of nitrate is low. It doesn't make sense if we say that the low supply of nitrates lead to the booming of phytoplankton. So we have to develop the dynamic thinking style and observe the change of the nitrate concentration and growth of the phytoplankton population along the time. So you can see the red arrows and the green arrows later on. It takes time for the phytoplankton to absorb the nitrate in the pond water for growth and reproduction. So you can observe that the red arrows down and the green arrows up. Based on the time lagging concept, the high concentration of nitrate is not with the peak, but before the peak. Therefore, the third factor is the richest supply of the nitrates. The phytoplankton absorb the nitrates for making protein and growth. So that's why they will experience a rapid growth. At this point, I would like to talk about the small number of phytoplankton population in summer. You may think that the light intensity and temperature should be the most favorable for the phytoplankton booming. However, the nitrate concentration is very low before and during summer. Therefore, there is not enough nutrients for the phytoplankton to grow and reproduce. Meanwhile, we can apply the concept of time lagging for the decomposition of dead bodies as the phytoplankton die in the late spring to early summer. Then the dead body of the phytoplankton will be decomposed by the bacteria into nitrates, which are the inorganic materials. This takes time for the concentration of nitrate increases in early autumn, and this increase promotes the growth of the phytoplankton population to the peak B. In part B, we have to use the graph and explain why the peak A is higher than the peak B. Remember, we have to explain the phenomenon based on the graph. What we shall do is to compare the environmental factors in different seasons, and we use the environmental factor to explain how this factor leads to the high peak in spring than in autumn. It's shown that the temperatures and the light intensities in spring and autumn are quite similar. So we need to recall the concept of time lagging. We can take a look at the nitrate supply. Then we can observe that the high nitrate supply in spring and autumn. The rich nitrate supply can support the rapid protein synthesis and growth of the phytoplankton. In part C, we need to suggest two biotic factors which may be responsible for the rapid decreases in the population of phytoplankton in late spring. In this question, surely is checking your understanding of the biotic factor, which are the organisms. Among different organisms, there are different types of relationships such as predation, competition, and symbiosis. It is also the concept being checked in this question. So the phytoplankton may be eaten by the fish. They may also compete with each other within the species for the light and for the nitrates. Some of them may lose and not get enough amount of light and nitrates for growth, and then they die. Part D, we have to explain the low level of algae throughout the winter. Firstly, we have to identify the specific environmental conditions in winter. Then we compare these conditions with those in other seasons, particularly in spring and autumn. Thirdly, we can point out the particular factors leading to the poor growth and small population of the phytoplankton. So you can see that in winter, the temperature is very low, and the light intensity is also lower than that in spring and summer, also in autumn. So we can see that low light intensity and low temperature may lead to the low level of phytoplankton in winter. After this question, I hope you do not only realize the fundamental concept in ecosystem, but also equip the simple examination skills. Last but not least, the concept of time lagging. It doesn't get easier, you get stronger. You may not see the result immediately, but if you really put effort, practice and learn from the mistake, and then you must be able to achieve your goal. Support you guys. See you next time. Bye bye.